running for U.S. Senate here in Alabama, and had a unique opportunity to sit down with my good friend Dan Jollota and talk about some of the stuff that happened in Somalia. We certainly did a lot more than just that mission together, but his role in it is pretty special. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before we do, I'd like to let Dan just introduce himself briefly.
Yep. Yeah. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. And 4-year veteran, joined the service in '76. Met Mike in 1990 as I joined the 160th, and then we went to Mogadishu in 1993. I was part of the CSAR, the Combat Search and Rescue team, flying Super 6-8, and we had 6 successful missions out there. And then the 7th mission on 3 October kind of defined our day and defined our life in the future. After Cliff Walcott and Donovan Briley got shot down, we put the Combat Search and Rescue team in. And then we got a little bit of damage with our aircraft, went back to the airfield to pick up the spare. At that point in time, we took off in the spare aircraft. Mike had already been shot down. And we spent the rest of the night, day and night, Mike and his crew, hoping that they had gotten out of that crash site and maneuvered to safe area.
So I want to kind of go back over a couple of things you talked about, because you mentioned it briefly, but 40 years of the military is pretty impressive. That's 40. That's almost twice what I did. And going back in reverse chronological order, Dan's an Afghanistan vet, an Iraq vet, a Bosnia vet, a obviously Somalia vet, and a Just Cause in Panama vet. Those are all combat operations, and probably multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. So heck of a career. He's also a Special Forces Golden Knight, which is the Army's demonstration parachute team. How many jumps you got?
A little over 6,000. But as most of you out there are listening to this podcast or recording, it's all a career path that you have no idea how it's defined until you get into it. And just like Mike, we started doing things once, and once we get to a crossroad, you make yourself better by doing something more. And that kind of defined our life. It still is now. Mike running for Senate at this late stage in his life.
Hey, it's not that late. So, but just an amazing career. And, like Dan said, we first crossed paths in 1990, and then obviously Somalia is 3 years later in 93. The thing most people don't know is essentially this was a hunt for terrorists. The Somalis, the Haber-Gitter clan, was being trained by what we believe was Al-Qaeda on how to shoot down helicopters, because Al-Qaeda had learned how to shoot down helicopters from Afghanistan when they were fighting against the Russians. So it all comes back, unfortunately, in this circle. But as Dan mentioned, we had flown 6 missions that all went really well. Actually, we captured almost 30 people, I think. Hadn't lost any aircraft, lost any people. A few folks got wounded. And then October 3rd rolls around, and like Dan said, it was a defining moment, I think, for everyone that was there. I mean, whether it's the special mission units or our folks, that there's probably not too many things any of us have experienced in our lives that is more unfortunately impactful than what happened that day. 18-hour firefight, 19 killed overall, and 5 aircraft shot down. So as Dan kind of went through it, you had Super 6-1 shot down first, which was Cliff Walcott and Donovan Briley. And then Dan went in there to put in the search and rescue team, and he took an RPG in the side. And as I understand it, you still had guys on the ropes. Is that correct? So you were fast roping guys in, and that's pretty. Again, you think about the moment. You already had one bird down. You're putting folks on the target, and then you get hit. And as I understand it, you guys did what you were supposed to do, which is stay in place and get the last few guys on the ground before pulling pitch out of there. And then a few minutes later, I went in to replace 6-1, and that's when I got shot down by an RPG. So far, all three of the first aircraft got shot down by RPGs. And then the fourth one to go down is Super 6-2, which was Jim Yacone and Mike Athena. Yeah. And they put in Randy Shugart and Gary Gordon. And if you know anything about Somalia, you know those names. Congressional Medal of Honor. And they came to our crash site because the search and rescue team had already been put in by Dan at the first crash site. And then the fifth bird is actually Stan Wood. Was he flying with Gary Fuller? Is that him? Yeah. And they didn't get hit by an RPG, but they took what I think it's like 30 small arms rounds when they were trying to resupply the guys on the ground at night. Yeah. So, what I tell people is it was a horrible experience, but it's also one I think we're all proud of because, I mean, everybody put their lives on the line for 18 hours to make it happen. And other missions went much better than that one, but it's still an amazing thing to have been a part of. So here I am in Captivity, and I've been there for a while. Maybe you could talk about what you guys were doing until we get to the moment where I'm going to read from the book here.
Yeah, and I hit the nail on the head that day. And for the vets out there, and for people who have been through some nasty situations, it doesn't have to be combat, but you have to understand the fact that when the battle started going south and we started losing aircraft or losing people, then it became a battle of survival, and you were fighting for the guy next to you, and you were just trying to survive the situation. You're trying to get everybody out of the situation, and you're trying to move on to better days. So, when Mike, when we landed that morning, we didn't know Mike's status. And at that point in time, I had flown 18 and a half hours, I guess, at that point in time, in the Seesaw bird, trying to find him, his crew, Randy and Gary, anybody else that was left out there. We had Super 6-1 site was pretty much taken care of by the Seesaw team. And so we went to bed. I went to bed. I was woke up really early in the afternoon by Stan, and we had gotten information that Mike was alive. And you don't know how exciting that was to have a friend, basically that we didn't know his status for a number of hours, and that we were finally told that he was alive. And so now the focus became one is to refit. So we already had helicopters, and we had personnel from Fort Campbell coming back into Mogadishu to refit the force, because we thought we had to go back out. And then the main focus, though, at that point in time, was getting Mike back. And so me and a young captain by the name of John Magnus kind of took the lead on that. I don't know why that happened that way. I was a friend of Mike's, and John and I kind of focused our attention on that aspect of it. There's an agency out there called the Joint Personnel Recovery Agency, JPRA, that was active, but there really wasn't much going on in 1993. So we called them in DC, and they were not able to come out and help us. But me and John had daily conversations with them about what to do, and I don't know how deep you want me to go into this now, but we started crafting a plan to try to grid the city out with music and noise and voices, and then in the hopes that Mike was hearing us, and then maybe Mike would correspond with us in the future, and we could maybe pinpoint where it was.
So, I've always said that there's a lot of things going on, and I do believe that had I stayed in captivity longer, we would have been successful in figuring out, some of this, because a lot of it was being made up on the fly, actually, and certainly on my side. Yeah. And I do believe that we could have probably been sharing 10-digit grid coordinates by the time it was all over. If I would have known what my grid coordinate was, but
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of the funniest parts about this story was Mike had put out 2 letters. He had put out a letter to his family, and then a letter to really our task force headquarters. We dissected those letters and dissected those words, and really every letter in that those correspondence, trying to figure out if he was passing a message to us. He was just trying to get us. He was just trying to get notification out there that he was alive and he was okay. But we peel back the onion, we call it. We try to figure out where he was going. In retrospect, I'll tell you, almost 30 years later, I think if we had launched a mission to go get him, he may not have survived the situation.
which was definitely a concern on my side for sure. So, in terms of, I mentioned the movie earlier, people always ask about that helicopter flying through the city, and to restate it, I mean, it's Dan's voice in the real world. And as I recall, again, it's been 30 years. When I wrote the book, I was doing my best to recall the facts. Even when I wrote the book, it had been 10 years. So from my recollection, the first song I heard is pretty familiar to me. It starts out with a bong, bong, and it's by our friends AC/DC,
Yeah.
which were really popular. In fact, if you think back, a lot of the crew chiefs name their information to the band, by the way, which they kind of got a kick out of that a lot of our aircraft were named after their songs. But because it's a helicopter and it's turning, I heard that, and then it faded away. And that wasn't the first time in Captivity that I thought, okay, something's imminent here, because I can hear noises or gunfire or whatever, and then it fades away. So there's sort of this emotional, getting amped up a little bit, and then it goes away. There was no accident that AC/DC was one of the songs. Now I do understand that you guys got a little bit more creative with songs later on, but we'll just stick with AC/DC for now.
Well, for the crowd, you have to appreciate the fact that we didn't know where Mike was, and so we had hoped he was in the city, and then we'd hoped he was close enough by. But everybody we talked to, the JPRA guys and the psych and everybody, wanted us to kind of give Mike some hope. And in that, obviously I've never been a POW and never been put in that situation, but in those dire times, you want some hope that people are out there, people are trying to find you, people are trying to get to you. And so the noise of the music, and we were, like Mike was saying, the aircraft was named after AC/DC songs, and it was very popular back in the 90s. We used to listen to it quite a bit. Knew that was what he liked, but it also served the purpose. I was telling you earlier about gridding the city out. We were trying to grid it out. So if you heard a song, and it was some other song, I think "Oops, There It Is" was one of them, but he would mention that song too, so we could eliminate some of the portions of the city. And then the voice thing came out. Someone had mentioned, hey, put a voice out there so he knows that, because at that point in time, Mike, he had no idea about Super 6-1 situation, except for his own. So you have to appreciate the fact that one proof of life for people that had survived that day, and that we were still there and not leaving them behind.
So then, the next thing I write about in my book, which I've always said to people, still does send a shiver up my spine when I think about it, which was your voice, and you were calling out Mike Durant, and right, straight from the book. It was Dan's voice. I know that voice anywhere. My good friend Dan Jollota was up there calling out to me, searching desperately for me. He knew that he was flying above a hornet's nest of RPGs and could get himself shot down at any second, but he just didn't give a damn. Mike Durant, we won't leave without you.
Yeah, and at that point in time, you have to appreciate the fact that we didn't know really what to do. The president of the United States had not decided what our status was. So we were refitting, I was telling you, retraining, and John and mine and really the task force's purpose was to get Mike back. And thank goodness as a fate would happen in 11 days. Red Cross would come in and do their job and get the man back. But we were ready to go out there and lay waste to Mogadishu to get Mike back.
And I think they knew that. And I think that's why they finally decided to just let me go. But, you know, the next part of that I write about, I think is always, and it's actually part of why I wrote the book, because these kind of things are so bizarre. After this gigantic firefight, and as we know it on the Somali side, hundreds of Somalis were killed. And the next day, I mean, this is not the next day after hearing your voice, but it was pretty typical every morning. It was like a normal day. I mean, kids are out playing in the street, you hear them laughing and singing and running around. And it was just bizarre. But you know, the thing that really did stick with me, and you talked about, you know, the rationale behind doing it, is that I knew there was no doubt you guys would leave without me, and you were out there trying to figure out where I was and how you're going to get me out. Because it is a psychological battle. You know, the thing, I was only in captivity 11 days, but on day one, you don't know if it's day one of 5,000 or day one of 11. So it is a psychological every day, every minute battle. And those things really did make a difference. And I appreciate the sacrifice and the effort that you guys put into it. And
Mike plays the situation off lightly. You know, he had a compound fracture of his femur and a broken back. So it wasn't just an emotional and psychological fight every day. He was also physically damaged. And, you know, he had to deal with his captives because he didn't know what kind of driven captives we're going to do next. So as I said earlier in this talk, you know, at the end of the day, it all has to do with, you know, supporting the guy on the ground and supporting your friend and your comrades out there. And the bottom line, you know, in our world, and I'm sure in most of you guys' world out there that are serving, you do anything for the guys that you're serving with, you know.
yeah, that is what it all comes down to, for sure. Well, we just want to talk about that one part because it is it's pretty unique. I don't know that it's happened too many times in any other conflict, you know, where this exact combination of things happened, and here we are 30 years later, and you know, still hanging out. So appreciate you then, and appreciate you now, and appreciate your service for sure. Twice as much as me. What's up with that? You probably have twice as much flight time as I do too at this point.
No, but I got to put a pitch in for you know, the Alabama Senate. So you know, all I could do as a friend and as a comrade of Michael is hope that his Senate race goes well. I think he would serve the people of Alabama and this nation extremely well.
Well, I appreciate it, and we're hoping to do some more little segments like this about other parts of this story if we get an opportunity. So you know, check the website, and we'll get them out there, and you'll hear more about what happened then, and who knows where else we'll talk about. But appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.